Welcome everyone to episode 120 of Raw Sport. My name is Ahmad Elhawli, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Frank Gilfeather. Frank, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Frank,
I'm looking forward to chatting to you, especially as we're thousands and thousands of miles apart.
we absolutely are. Frank,
Yeah.
you're someone who's been in the sport of boxing for a long, long time. You were an amateur champion, then you moved into the world of media. You're a news reporter. You covered sport, and most recent years, you've been coaching, inspiring, and being a huge part of people's lives. Now, you've gone from transition to transition to transition, and very different every time. Who
Yeah.
is Frank Gilfeather? Where did this journey start?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is I'm not finished yet. There's still more to come from me. I'm only just getting started in this social media stuff, but I'm from a working class background in a place called Dundee on the east coast of Scotland. My dad ran boxing clubs all his days. And he did it for the right reasons to get young people off the streets and doing something useful and to feel part of a boxing community. So I was brought up in that environment and started going to boxing gym at the age of 4 and stopped when I was in my 20s. And I thought, right, I need to concentrate on my work, which involved learning about journalism and then working for newspapers, then into radio and TV. But in the last, I guess, 15 to 20 years, I started to go back to the gym just to keep fit. And it kind of reinvigorated me in terms of wanting to be involved in boxing. I love the training. But I then began to love more and more the involvement with young boxers. And I could see that many of them, most of them, were being neglected in terms of learning. And that people, you got coaches who were great at shouting, do this, bang, 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 and walking away, or shouting time. And that was a kind of, there was no teaching. There was no imparting of knowledge that I could see. And so I started to take that responsibility on board, kind of unofficially in the boxing gym where I was training. And so it developed from there. And it was about 3 years ago that we were training, my son and I, Paul, we were training at a local gym here. And he said, why don't you show me how to throw an uppercut? And we had this thing called a wall back, this contraction, which was quite new to me. And so we used that. I showed him how to do the uppercut, and he said, I'm going to post that on TikTok. And I said, fine. I hadn't seen TikTok, and he posted it, and things started to move very, very rapidly. And we quickly got to 50,000, and it still kept going and going. And then we kind of dipped our toe in Instagram. And so, 2.5 years ago, or about 2 years ago, I had 170 followers on Instagram, 170. And today it's 650,000. Um,
Wow.
because people then, I mean, the response has been phenomenal and the engagement has been remarkable because people have bought into what I'm trying to sell, which is uncomplicated ways of learning how to box. There is no, I'm not a great one for all these drills and all that stuff that goes on. I want to teach skill and technique. So that's where I come from.
Wow. You were an amateur champion in the younger days. Why not pursue a pro career?
Well, I was offered pro contracts from a couple of big names in boxing in the UK at the time. One of whom was a man called Joe Gans, who was the father of Walter McGowan, who was the world flyweight champion. Now, from the age of 15, I sparred with McGowan. And, I kept on sparring up until I was about 19, I think. And his father kept suggesting that I could turn professional, I was 17, 18. It didn't really, it didn't really do much for me, that kind of thinking. It did earlier when I was 14, 15, 16. I thought, right, the way ahead for me is going to be a professional
Boxing.
career. There was a guy called Peter Keenan, who was a major promoter in Scotland at the time, and he himself had been a major champion as a bantamweight. And he just presented it to me one night at a dinner for McGowan when he won the world title. And he said to me, right, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be managed in London by Al Phillips. You'll box for the cartel of promoters down there. And he was part of that cartel, but he ran the Scottish wing, if you like. And at that moment, I was 19 and I said, nah, I don't think so. I'm looking around the table and I can see I was sitting with lots of top professional fighters. And I said to him, Peter, this is really nice of you. However, the guy at this table who's wearing the mohair suit, smoking the Havana cigar and drinking Napoleon brandy is the promoter. That tells me where the money goes. And, I
Wow.
just thought that kind of didn't tickle my fancy to turn professional. I saw a lot of these guys. And even today I go to professional shows and I can't believe how poor the standard is. I'm talking at a lower level. And how, and I hate this, okay, I understand young boxers with potential are nurtured by promoters and to try and become champions. And so to that end, they're matched against inferior opposition, what we used to call journeymen,
Yeah.
guys who'd be dragged in to say, well, give this young kid a walkabout, and basically they're human punch bags. And so, I found it terribly boring and unexciting. So I have no regrets about not turning professional. It just didn't appeal to me.
You moved into the world of news media.
Yeah.
And the way I see it outside in, which is one of the reasons why I started this podcast, is the sport really lacks in that aspect. Because I believe personally that too much of the current media has too many strings attached to promoters, to influential individuals, and there isn't enough independent media to keep these people honest, to keep these people on their toes, like there is in sports, in other sports, leagues, so on and so on. So we always get the scripted narrative, not the story that needs to be told to create that competition that the sport needs to thrive. Now, you've seen, you've been in the media landscape, or you were for many years. You've now come back to the sport. You were in the sport before that. It's funny that analogy that you used and your analysis of the table at such a young age. To me, that is remarkable. What do you see that needs to be done in today's boxing media landscape that we truly lack?
Well, you raise an interesting point there because the the current the current crop, if you like, social media has changed everything. Now, in my day, even with the Scotland amateur team, the major newspapers in Scotland would send a boxing writer with you. So if we went to Denmark or Italy or Bulgaria, the boxing writers went with you to record what was happening. Nowadays, that doesn't happen because the last of the great boxing writers in the UK, a guy called Jeff Powell, I think Jeff is about 83 or thereabouts, and they wheel him out for the big events, the Daily Mail, and quite rightly, because he can analyse, he can see things that other people can't in the media. And we just lost quite recently a guy called Colin Hart from the Sun newspaper.
Yeah.
So all that's gone. What we've got now is, and I know that you're going to be talking with Eddie Hearn soon, but you've got guys like Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn who have their own media companies. So they are using their own media to promote their interests and their promotions and their boxers. So while you've got all that, and it's healthy enough, but my question is, where are the challengers? Where are the independent thinkers who can say, hang on a second, you can't get away with that. I'll challenge you on that point. I don't see many of those around these days. And I think that's what the game lacks in terms of the media's relationship with boxing. I think we need to be challenging these people. Talk sport in the UK is excellent at doing that. And I do understand that there's sometimes apprehension among some people about going on to talk sport because they know they will get the tough questions. Eddie Hearn, of course, Eddie Hearn is a superb, some might say exceptional media performer. He knows how it works. He knows how to manipulate it. He knows how to answer the difficult questions. So does Frank Warren, the two major promoters. But I still think they need to be challenged. I still think you need to prod these people. And even guys like Turki Al-Sheikh. I mean, he's come into boxing and he's changed the whole landscape of things. Actually, he's changing it every other day by the looks of it.
Yeah.
And I can't see anybody pulling him up and saying, come on, let's talk about this seriously. It's all about promotion and less about being being made to squirm, to be scrutinized.
Wow. Some have. And they've been targeted. They've been banned from events.
Yeah.
They've been pushed out. And 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 I personally believe that's to the detriment of the sport. It doesn't help the sport.
No.
And that's the one thing that the sport and the reason why I'm gone into this so much is because I know what it takes to cover the sport independently from the outside, getting the masses to get rid of that stigma that this sport has, not rigged, but has favorites. Has favorites.
Yeah.
There's a bit of manipulation.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge believer, with respect to everyone out there, that until we do that, the sport's not going to evolve, no matter how much money we pour into it. It really isn't.
No, I think you're right. I think, and that's why I was excited when the Saudis came on board, because they started to change things. And then they started to freeze out the big two in the UK, for example, Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, who would have been saying, hang on, we were doing so well together. But then Turki Al-Sheikh is clearly a strong character. And he said to himself, right, I think I know how to do this now. I can go on my own. Or, as he did, I can go with USC. And,
TKO,
and
yeah.
yeah, and
TKO.
and yeah, and say, I could do it with them. So there's no exclusivity there. I kind of like that. I don't like some of the stuff that's happening in terms of bending the rules a little, changing things that don't need changed, in my view. But that's okay. These guys are putting up the money, and I guess they have a right to do what they want virtually. However, what nobody has a right to do is suppress freedom of speech. And so, if they're challenged, they shouldn't feel scared at being held accountable for anything. They should be able to, like politicians, they should be able to answer the questions, you know, however tough they might be.
You grew up in a very different era in the sport.
Yeah,
Some may say the golden era of this sport. What's the
yeah,
biggest difference that you see, Frank, from your time to where we are now? You've seen a huge chunk of the last 100 years.
yeah. That's true. Well, there's lots of different. I mean, there's an evolution in every sport, isn't there?
Of
Um,
course.
and you always get these people who say, but you know, the guys, the greats of yesteryear wouldn't have stood a chance today. But of course, that's nonsense. They would have, because if you were to bring them back today as young men, Jack Dempsey, Sugar Ray Robinson, Archie Moore, Willie Pep, all these wonderful fighters, they would have dominated the sport today as they did 50, 60, 70 years ago, because they would have had the same fitness regime, the same nutrition that the fighters have today. And so there would be, in terms of the fitness, there would have been inequality. But in terms of the skill and technique, I think, and you know, it's different. I've got to think about this because I know what you're going to get. You're going to get people saying, these old guys think it was better in the old days. But if you have talent, if you have skill, and you had it 50, 60 years ago, you will not have lost it all these years if you were brought back, if you get my meaning. What you will do, your performance would be enhanced by the evolution of fitness and nutrition and diet and all that stuff. So what you have these guys who are, and remember at top level, these world champions were boxing 15 rounds. And they were boxing in severe conditions sometimes. And the gloves weren't as they are today. And you know, and they didn't have the kind of same what do you call it? The kind of same
Padding.
mollycoddling,
Yeah.
or yeah, if you like, that boxers have today. So I think you've got to try, and it's hard to compare, but the only thing you can compare is ability. Now, I don't see that ability around in great numbers as you did in yesteryear. I think, you know, the contender, where are the contenders, for example, in the heavyweight division? You know, so if you take out the guys like Usyk, by the way, he follows me and he's a wonderful guy. He's a great champion. If you take him out of the equation, he's 38. If you take Joshua out of the equation, he's what, 36. Fury's gone. And you've got Moses Itauma. Who else have we got? Joseph Parker? You know, I don't think so. So what you've got to do, if you examine the divisions individually, the weight divisions today, compared to 50 years ago, 60 years ago, my contention is this. 50 and 60 years ago, there'd be any number of contenders in each weight division capable and good enough to be the world champion. I can't think that is around today. You know, if you take out Canelo, who will be retiring soon, I guess.
Yeah.
Terence Crawford. Terence is getting on a bit. If you take these guys out of the equation, where's the talent? Where, you know, it's not there in the numbers that we saw all those years ago when I was a kid growing up.
Wow. And why do you think this is the reason?
Well, coaching. Okay.
Okay, this is a good segue. Yeah, tell us.
Yeah, it's a simple thing.
Yeah.
That for me, there are coaches and there are teachers. Right, coaches. There are coaches. You're coming into the amateur game, for example. You get lots of guys like me who look at young coaches coaching amateur boxing clubs, and these guys. And I know it's an easy thing to say. These coaches haven't had a glove on. They haven't experienced being in the ring having their face punched or their body hurt. So that takes away from their ability, in my view, to be a fully rounded coach. I'm not saying they can't coach or they're incapable, but you need that full picture, in my view, to understand what's going on in the ring. You need to be able to pick flaws in your opponent, your boxer's opponent, and pick flaws in your own boxer. And you need to be able, within each minute that you have available between rounds, you need to be able, if necessary, to change the course of that contest. Now, what we call them now is you get a lot of PE teachers coming in to boxing. Guys with a tracksuit and so on. I've seen them. I think, oh, my goodness, these are the guys who are going to get kids hurt in boxing. Why? Because the first thing, in my view, a young boxer coming into the gym should be taught and made to practice again and again and again. Everything's about repetition when you're new. You've got to get the fundamentals right before you move on to the next level. But where is the teaching of defensive boxing? I don't see it. I watch kids square on, hands up here like this, because they think that's the right way. And they're taking pounding jabs right down the middle onto their nose. I've seen it. I've sent the kids, you do realize there is a way you can stop that. And they say, no, how do you do that? And so you teach them defense. Number one, defend. If you can't defend, you'll never win a contest. Or you will be hurt. Or the analogy I use is, if I say to a kid, let's imagine that you've won the contest because you've hit that guy 21 times over 3 rounds, but he's hit you 20. You've won, but you've taken 20 blows to the head and the body. Do you think that's a winner? I don't. I want to minimize the number of punches a boxer takes. So that's important to me. Let's teach the defensive aspect first. Everybody's going to go, come on, get in there, come on, fight, fight, fight. No, box, box, box. That's what I say.
Wow, you make a very valid point, because in today's world, we're seeing social media be the driver and the motivation behind why so many of these young guys go to the boxing gym, or girls. And I feel it's very different. Back in the days, people that would fight, they'd fight to eat and live. Like, that was their earning. In
Yeah,
today's world, I think the world's become a lot more convenient for everyone. There's a lot more people who have some sort of level of life of comfort.
yeah,
And the boxing gym is either a therapist or a way to stay fit and healthy, or a destination for socializing and networking and friendship,
yeah,
which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, why
no,
pay therapists when you can just go to a boxing gym, right?
yeah,
and, and but the issue is that the same generation is taking that into the ring, and it's being brought, and they're being guided by, as you just said, PE teachers, people in the health and fitness industry, which is great, fine. We also need those people in our lives and in our circles.
yes,
But as you
we,
said,
we, we do.
yeah, the fundamentals are not there. They're really not. And
Yeah,
because it's such a sport with a lack of structure, especially in Australia where I'm from, it doesn't have that multi-level structure on both ends. If you look at, for example, football slash soccer, that's
hmm,
got UEFA coaching licenses, FIFA coaching licenses, level
yeah,
A, B, C, D, so many levels that you have to go through to be able to participate in,
yeah,
excuse me, in a position of coaching. Whereas in a boxing gym, you can go get your license off doing a course and you're a boxing trainer. So
yeah,
I think, and I'm going to give you obviously the space to talk about this. I think personally, that's where the that's where we need to start right there, because that's half the problem.
It is, and the other thing too is if you haven't done it, and this is one of my criticisms of, and I can't speak for every boxing club, but generally speaking, boxing clubs who too frequently allow their boxers who have retired, okay, have retired from boxing, don't they allow them to leave the club and say thank you very much, when in fact they should be harnessing their skills and their expertise and say, why don't you stay on, take the kids? Why don't you help the young guys out because you are good at this, and why don't you coach them on this aspect of boxing and so on? So I think we've allowed too many of boxers who have retired. I think we've allowed them just to leave the sport, when in fact I know that many of them would have enjoyed, embracing the coaching life, and would have been able to help young boxers. Well, I see now, you hit upon the point early on in that question when you were saying that young boxers have it easier. Everybody has it easier, generally speaking. So I watch guys, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old guys. I train harder than them. I'm in the gym and they're alongside me on a punch bag. And I think I couldn't go at that speed. In other words, I couldn't go so slowly. I couldn't punch so ineffectively. It's just not in my DNA to be
Mm.
like that. I need to be going hard at it for 3 minutes. These guys, they're having breaks for a drink of water. Some of them go in between rounds, they'll go and sit down and check their phones. And that's, that's not a good way to be. I think if you look at the great coaches, it's certainly in the UK, guys like Brendan Ingle, and his generation, you do it his way. You work. You're there. I keep telling young boxers, you're there for 90 minutes or 2 hours. 2 hours out of your day. Give it everything. Put your whole body and soul and mind into it. And you'll leave the gym feeling far better about yourself than you would if you're just playing at it, tippy tappy stuff. No, I say, kids, I can't believe that you're punching the bag so lightly. Where's the force? Where's the power? And they just go, well, I don't know. So it's infuriating for me sometimes, especially when you teach them a technique, a special skill, and you've got to hammer it again and again and again and again, and they get it right, and I make them do it again and again, and they get it right. And you walk away and you go and coach another kid. You come back 10 minutes later and the first guy's back to what he was doing before you taught him. So you try to break that cycle of bad habits, and sometimes it's really, really difficult. Most of the times it's difficult, but you do get the exceptions, and you can see instantly when that happens, and you think, oh, this guy gets it. This guy knows what to do. He listens and he acts upon what he's told. You need more of that.
You've been in the gym now for many years. You've seen a lot of talent come and go. You've grown
Yeah.
up around it through your father, who used to run boxing clubs.
Mhm.
What's the one thing that stood out to you, Frank, that's been the difference between a young guy or a young girl making it and not making it?
Well, there's of course a dedication aspect. And I think, if we take that out of the equation, we know you've got to be fit. We know you've got to work hard. They don't do like, I was saying to somebody the other day, I would have a knock on my door at 6 in the morning from my coach and say, right, come on, let's go. And I'd do 3 or 4 miles. Not with trainers. Trainers didn't exist in my day. I mean, the trainers you wear on your feet. We had hobnail army boots full of metal studs. That's what you ran in. And you didn't have tracksuits. You wore any old stuff. that you get, sweaty stuff that never got washed for weeks. You just pulled it on again. And you went, and the boxing gloves in the gym were horsehair. So with the punching of the bag, they just, there's a big gap in the middle almost of padding. It was either pushed up or down or both. But but so we need that dedication. We need that work ethic back into it with young boxers. You could tell a guy who's a natural the minute you see him. And the naturals, in my view, are becoming fewer and fewer. But you can occasionally go into a gym and watch a kid, and you think he knows what he's doing. And these are the guys you've got to nurture in terms of coaching and teaching, because you know that they will be able to act upon what they're told. Nowadays, there are too many machines, too many robots, and they go on the bag and they go bang, 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 bang. Great for your fitness, but that's zero for your thought process. Are you thinking about where you're throwing those punches? Are do you imagine that punch bag is an opponent? Because that's what you should be doing. And how do how you imagine his hands are there and how you would open him up and hit him to the body and in the chin, all that stuff. No, it's just robotic. And so, it's infuriating for trainers like me when young kids don't get it. In which case, after a while, and I realize either they don't get it or they're not listening or they're not terribly interested to be told, I'll just let them get on with it themselves. Now, that's great because they keep fit, they feel important, they feel good about themselves, they feel part of a boxing community, and that, for me, is enough, right? That's great. But for the guys who want to go further, then you do what I did. You train every night, apart from Saturday, and you keep going. And you work hard twice a day. Excuse me, talking too much. And so that's what you do. And you try and improve your skills. And you take the knocks. And if you haven't got a good chin, you take the defeats. Defeats are important. You can't go through and think, I want to be unbeaten. No, defeat is helpful because you learn from those defeats.
Do you think we've set a bad culture in the sport with this whole mentality of not losing? Because even from a promoter's perspective, the whole ecosystem is around keeping that zero, padding him up to a certain level, then chipping away, going up the rankings, and then getting a world title shot like the easiest way through. Has that been a negative? Has that negatively impacted the sport and produced the level of fighters that we are seeing today?
Well, yeah. I'll give you an example. I know a guy who won a bronze medal at the Commonwealth Games a few years ago. He turned professional with a top promoter. And I think he went something like 9 in a row without defeat. I think many of them were stoppages. Okay, he was being groomed to be, a potential star. So the opposition wouldn't have been good enough for him. But that's all part of the game. You've got to learn. You've got to go in there, do the 6 rounds, do the 8 rounds, and so on. So around about his 10th contest, he was beat and he was stopped. That promoter cancelled his contract immediately.
Wow.
One defeat. And that guy's never recovered. And now he coaches in a gym, which is good. It's helpful. But his career was wrecked by that one defeat. And that's wrong. And that's a big difference. Because in my day, amateur or professional, you would be beaten. It's virtually impossible to go through an entire career without being beaten. But it tests you. It tests your resilience and how you do things. And it makes you tweak the little flaws in your makeup and makes you a better boxer. And the other thing too is you've got to have a good chin. And you know, it's not good to find out whether you have a good chin or not. But when you do, it's kind of exhilarating in a way. You're like, oh, I took that shot. I've been hit with some cracking blows from amateurs and professionals because I used to spar with professionals from the age of 15. And they, you know, there was no soft sparring in our day. It was for real. It was the kind of things you see Duran did when he was sparring, or Pacquiao, or these guys. It was for real.
Wow.
And you're able to say, no, I took that shot. I didn't buckle. You know, I felt it. And of course, the key thing is you don't show your opponent that you're hurt or in distress. So it's all part of the game.
I mean, it's funny you say that because we recently saw a Manny Pacquiao at 46 years old come back and put it up to a modern day champion in Mario Barrios, and he was holding the WBC title, what is considered the most prestigious title in boxing. It
Yeah.
really speaks of the level.
It does.
It
It
does.
does. So you're saying that goes back to what I said earlier. Where are the up and coming guys?
Yeah.
If you've got, if you've got a guy, Manny Pacquiao, coming back for after 4 years in retirement and boxing for the world championship in that comeback fight against a guy who was 16 years younger, and that guy couldn't beat him. It was a draw, and you're thinking, what's gone wrong? You know, where are the young fighters? Where are the guys who can challenge Barrios? And if you're a young fighter and you think you're good enough to challenge the champion, but you see a 46-year-old former world champion, a great, coming back and getting a title shot ahead of you, what does that do for your confidence? What does it do for your thinking process in terms of where is my future in this game, if that's what can happen? So it goes back to what you were talking about earlier about promoters running everything nowadays. I honestly don't believe that the governing bodies like the WBC, WBO, WBA, any of them, IBF, I don't believe they have any teeth. I think they'll nod agreement to just about anything suggested by promoters because they know that they will get their percentage of the gate money and the TV money or whatever. So
Sanctioning fees, yeah.
yeah, so that in that way, it's not entirely kosher.
Frank, let's talk about the experience you went through, this social media frenzy that you sent the world into. Your videos were going viral, literally.
Yeah,
You're seeing him in Australia, you're seeing him in the US, all over the UK, all over the world. And it's everyone saying the caption you always see 80-year-old training in a boxing gym. That was
yeah.
always what people saw. How did that come about? What happened?
Well, we did a TikTok video, my son and I, years ago, about 3 years ago, and he said to me, "Show me how to throw an uppercut." And so I did this, and I mentioned a couple of things that he hadn't thought about. He'd boxed a little as a youth. He boxed, I think, 13 or 14 times, and he said nobody ever told me to take my chin offline when I'm throwing an uppercut.
Mm-hmm.
Little things like that. He said these are insights which people who are interested in boxing will like. I said, yeah. He put on TikTok. It went through the roof. We went onto Instagram. It went from virtually zero to today. Within about 2.5 years, it's now at 650,000. I started YouTube about 6 months ago. people keep saying, why aren't you doing it? I said, okay, I'll do it. And I think I've got about 63 or 64,000 YouTube followers. And today, in fact, just today, we have made our first moves to to give exclusive content on Instagram to subscribers. So, for the price of a couple of cups of coffee a month, you could get exclusive content and tuition and the teaching of skills, technique from me on a weekly basis. So that's the next thing we're going to try. It's marvelous because I've been out to Riyadh as a result of this because Turkey Al Sheikh follows me, and he said come out for the Bivol Beterbia fight, the last one, which we did, which was lovely. He invited me to the Ring Magazine Awards in London, which was fabulous. And the great thing for us is it's not about being starstruck. Far from it. I mean, I'm too long in the tooth for that. It's very interesting, and it's lovely to meet the boxing community at that level. Guys like Teddy Atlas, whom I've interviewed a couple of times. And we're all on the same kind of page, if you like. But for me, it's about content. Oh, and for example, next week is it 27th of August. I've been invited to attend a film premiere in London, and a new boxing themed film called The Cut with Orlando Bloom and Katrina Balfe. And I said, yeah, we'll go. It'll be lovely. The director, who also wrote and produced the movie, follows me. And he said, would you like to come? I said, yeah, sure. But I need access to these people because I want to ask them questions. See, it's a journalist coming out of me. And I want to do interviews for my community to put them on my Instagram page and my TikTok and YouTube. So that for me, this is going to be important for that. And although number two, it's going to be a lovely time, and I'm quite looking forward to it. So it's crazy. I mean, I've got a guy from the Times newspaper coming to see me later this week to do a feature because he can't believe it. He said, how did this, he's like you, how on earth did this happen? And I don't know. But what I try to do is be authentic, right? I'm not trying to be one of these smart guys who do that. And they do, I've seen these boxing videos and coaches, coaching videos, where it's clear that the little moves that they've done on the pads, are choreographed. They're rehearsed over and over again, so they're slick. I'm not like that. I just want to be, this is how you do it. And I'll show you how to do it. But more importantly, I'll tell you why you do it this way. Now, if people listen to that, and I get, honest to goodness, I get messages every single day of the week. I wish you could coach me, from boxers all over the world. We sell our bag mitts, the Noble Art bag mitts, in 60 countries.
Really?
Yep. And this is because, see, this is another thing. I wore bag mitts all my life. Nobody wore sparring gloves on the punch bag. You weren't allowed to. They were locked away until it was time to spar. Now everybody wears sparring gloves. All the champions, every single person. And I'm in the gym one day and I'm thinking, these are lovely, these look great. And I tried them and I thought, gee whiz, I can't clench my fist in here.
Yeah.
Because the thumb, I don't even see that, the thumb in a sparring glove is here. And nobody noticed this. It's attached by a little piece of elastic so that you can't move your thumb. You can't do that. And that was number one lesson when we went into the gym as a 4-year-old. Let me see you make a fist. And of course, you get guys doing this, you get kids doing that with their thumbs tucked in. And he said, no, this is, and this is the important bit. You punch with the knuckle part of the glove, right? You don't punch there, which lots of people are doing now because their hands are like that.
Yeah.
And they're slapping, right? I see it with champions on body punches. I'm thinking, how do you get away with that? referees just turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah.
So we've got to get back to the fundamentals and do it properly and punch properly. And we've got to tell kids that and how to defend their chin, right? If you can't defend your chin, you're in trouble.
How do you see the state of boxing in the UK compared to the US?
Yeah, well, I I don't think much of boxing in the UK. Obviously, you're going to get the exciting fighters. You're going to get the guys who set the heather on fire. Um, in Scotland, it's not great. Uh, in the US, of course, what we're seeing in this side of the Atlantic, we're seeing the top guys on TV, pay-per-view. Thank goodness Turkey Al Sheikh is going to abolish that with the zone.
Apparently,
Um,
yeah.
Apparently, yes. And what you're seeing the top five, but even the top fighters, in my view, I'm left kind of underwhelmed by by many of them, thinking, well, was that it? I went to Riyadh, as I told you, to see Bivol Beterbiev, and the undercard was pretty average. And these are guys at the top level. I thought, so, and you could see that the crowd become restless. They're not terribly interested. They're all waiting for the big fight, and even the Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr.
Yeah.
fight. I thought, my goodness, is that as good as we've got? Now, that's us flagging up our probably our two top fighters at the moment. Certainly two of them.
Especially brands, two biggest
Yeah,
brands. Yeah.
but I'm thinking, is that it? Guys who are basically haven't got the fundamentals right. Many of them are turning professional too early, and they're boxing too little. They're boxing twice a year or whatever. And that's one of the big differences going back to the days of 50, 60, 70 years ago. If you look at the records of the guys from those eras, you will see they were boxing every couple of weeks. Sugar Ray Robinson, my goodness, he can, in his twilight of his career, I went to see him. I trained with him in 1964 when he came to Scotland. And we had a chat, and he was sparring, and he was training on the bag next to me. And I just couldn't keep my eye on him. He's the greatest fighter of all time, in my view, because he was so beautifully athletic. He was rhythmic. He'd been a dancer, and so just to watch him was like watching the finest ballet dancer. He was so beautiful, and he could punch, and he could use every punch in the book when he wanted. Uh, and when you look at these guys, he came. Now, I think I might not have this totally accurately, but when in the last year of his career, when he was coming up to his mid 40s, he came to Europe to box. And I think he had 16 fights in 9 weeks. And that was to earn money to pay the tax man back in the US because he was skint. He had no money. And then, of course, a year after that, he retired. Uh, and these guys went through all, you couldn't get away with it these days. How many fights? He's a world champion. He's only had 16 fights. How did that happen? I'll tell you how it happened. It happened because the opposition is so feeble. It's so poor. So we haven't got the competition that we did in professional boxing all those years ago.
Wow. Um, Sugar Ray Robinson is
Yeah,
by many regarded as the greatest fighter that we have seen.
yeah.
You got to spend some time with him. You
Hmm.
got to train with him. You went a bit into the way he trains and so on and so on. But what's that one thing that stood out to you that made you think, wow, this guy he's just different. He's just cut from a different cloth.
Well, what they call ring IQ now. That phrase didn't exist in my day. But he used such clay box with a brain. I tell kids, if you and your opponent are equal physically, and your fitness levels are equal, who's going to win? The guy with the brain, right? The guy who can box clever. This was the great thing about Sugar Ray Robinson. He could box a fighter and fight a boxer. So if he had, if the guy he was fighting was a good boxer, he'd think, okay, I'll deploy my fighting ability. So I'll get close, I'll destroy his body, I'll get his hands down, and then I'll try and. But must you remember too that is that everybody today talks about knockouts. When is this fight going to end? What do you think? What round will it finish? What round will he win? In those days, these guys were boxing 15 rounds in championship fights frequently, not necessarily knocking each other. If you look at Robinson's 6 fights with Jake LaMotta, I think LaMotta won one, maybe two. I think he won one. And they were just brutal. And they were brutal because it's the only way LaMotta knew how to fight was on the front foot. He couldn't box. But you couldn't say the same about Sugar Ray Robinson. He could box and he was beautiful at boxing. Great jabs, great hooks, fantastic uppercuts. Uppercuts were out off the scale. Wonderful. He had every punch in his repertoire was superb. And so that's what made them special. He could say, right, I need to fight this guy or I need to box him because, like Jake LaMotta, he's head down, raging bull. He wants to kill you. So you don't engage with that. And when I said that in my prediction of the last Bivol Beterbiev fight, I said Bivol will win this because he will refuse to engage with a guy who's a superior puncher
Yeah.
and a guy who cannot go on the back foot. He doesn't know how to box. He wants to go forward all the time. So it's going to, and I said it's going to be difficult for Bivol, but if his fitness levels are good enough and he still has it for the business end of the contest, the last 3 rounds, he'll win it. And that proved my point in terms of the guy with the ring IQ will come out on top if he has the fitness and he has a good chin.
Wow. All right. We've gone through, I mean, Frank, I can talk to you all day because this sport fascinates me. You've been around it for a long, long time. You've seen the ups and the lows. In the grand scheme of things, where are we today as a sport, and how do you see the future?
Okay, let me make one thing absolutely clear. I'm not a huge fan, right? I I would be if I were invited to every fight, I would be very selective because I've seen too many uh, substandard, poor quality contests, and I wouldn't like to have to sit through them. I'd like to see the best, right? And unfortunately, the best are fewer and fewer and fewer. I mean, I remember the days when I used to go to the fights in Glasgow, and because I was Walter McGann's chief sparring partner for a while, he was the world flyweight champion, and I would watch guys on the undercard who were very good, ex-Olympic boxers, ex-medalists at the Olympics, guys who were up and coming, and who were up against good opposition, who could challenge them. Now I'm seeing less and less of that. And the other thing is, what we're seeing now, certainly up here, if you're not at a stadium or an arena, you're probably in a hotel ballroom with 300 people wining and dining before the boxing, and invariably drunk before and during the boxing. And I'm thinking, hang on a second, this is a sporting event. It's not a night of let's go out and get smashed. It's, are we interested in boxing? That's one of the big changes, right? So when I was boxing for Scotland, the interest was so high in my country and in the UK generally in amateur boxing that the BBC televised amateur boxing every other week. So, and I meant at the top level. So when I boxed on TV, it was Scotland against France, against Italy, against Denmark, against Switzerland, and so on and so on. And then next week you would see England against Romania, Hungary, the USSR as it was in those days. And these were top quality events. But the big thing for me was that the audience who were knowledgeable about amateur boxing as much as pro boxing, and remember, in those days, it was second only to football, soccer, in terms of popularity. So we've got places like Paisley Ice Rink, Scotland against Ireland. Ireland had a great team. 5,000 people there. Scotland against the USSR, as it was, 5,000 people. The Caird Hall in Dundee, Scotland against the USA, 3,000 people, and so on. So, and every single member of that audience bought a ticket, sat down, and watched the whole event, 10 contests, because they were interested. They were knowledgeable. They knew who they were watching because they followed these guys in newspaper articles and so on. And so that's one of the major changes. Now you go and you always realize, I was at a place a few weeks ago in Aberdeen, and it was packed and it was atmospheric. But this time I chose to be on the balcony, away from the rabble in the suits and the collar and tie, down on the floor where the boxing ring was, because halfway through the boxing, in between rounds, they were dancing on tables to loud music. And I thought, right, this is not a sport I want to be involved in, really. I'm happy if I can coach kids, try and set them on the path to do things properly. And then people buy into that, and they've certainly done that big style on social media. I now have 1.5 million followers over 3 channels. And I have on Instagram alone, I have regularly 11 million views every 30 days, every month. And so that tells me something. People are hungry for knowledge. People tell me I inspire them. People who are middle-aged or even elderly, and I tell them, get off the couch, get out for a walk, go and learn how to skip, go to the gym if you're able, punch the bag. And people, honest to God, it's fantastic. They're saying to me, you're an inspiration to me. I never thought of doing any of that stuff till I started watching your videos. 3 people have actually said, you saved my life. I get
Wow.
people with drug and alcohol problems who've said, you've changed my life. You saved me. And, I'm now focusing on going to the gym 3-4 times a week, and it's all down to you. Listen, if that's my legacy, that's what you want to call it, then I'll be the happiest man on earth. What more could you ask for than somebody telling you that and carrying through your message? It's wonderful.
Wow, very, very powerful. Frank, you've been amazing. I want to thank you very, very much. Honestly, I could talk to you all day. There's a lot that I could extract and learn more and more about you. But we're about to hit the hour mark. so, so we'll wrap things up. Frank, I want you to leave us with one message. What's that one message you can give to people that over the years you've learned so many lessons from, and you've come to the conclusion that this one thing where is what we need in our lives as human beings on this earth?
Well, I have this message on social media in terms of people, um, keeping themselves fit and healthy. And that message is simple. Never give up on yourself. Because if you do that, what you're going to do is you're going to become lazy. You're going to become overweight, perhaps. But what you're missing out on is a nicer life. You know, the chance to prolong your life. And if not prolong it, certainly make it better, having a better quality of life. So I think that's my key message. I mean, the boxing thing is great fun. I love it, and I love the engagement that I get from my followers who give me all kinds of encouragement because of that, and they give me questions, and that's what I'm going to do more and more of on my new subscription channel on Instagram. What I'm going to do is open up and every month and have a Q&A session with followers who'd come on and send me your videos. I tell them, send me your videos, and if you want me to analyze them, I'll do that. So it's the engagement for me that's really important. And it doesn't matter that I have never trained a champion. I've got zero interest in doing that. I want to impart my expertise, my knowledge, and my authenticity, if you like, uh, to people who are interested. And at the moment, they are interested. So the message is never give up on yourself. You are too important to give up on yourself because other people might be relying on you. And if you're not fit and healthy and looking after your body, then you should be. And that I'm trying to get that message through.
Wow, there you go. Frank, where can people find you online?
They can follow me on Instagram at Frank's Noble Art, which is all lowercase, all straight out. They can follow me on TikTok at Gilfeather, and they can follow me on YouTube with three words, Frank's Noble Art. And I hope you get something. I'm sure they will get something out of it. You know, we've got lots of kind of content pillars that we, not just the boxing, we've got the health messages, we've got some stuff about historical fights and some of my experiences in boxing growing up. So I'm kind of trying to offer more than just the one thing. I don't want to be one dimensional.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Frank Gilfeather, thank you very much for joining me on